Polls as 92-year-old President Paul Biya seeks an eighth term in office despite growing calls for change. With youth unemployment, insecurity, and opposition crackdowns dominating the campaign, the world watches as one of Africa's longest-serving leaders faces a fresh scrutiny. This is World Now. I am Theophilus Ilama. Cameroon heads to the polls tomorrow, Sunday, October 12th, for a presidential election that could extend the decades-long rule of 92-year-old President Paul Biya. The vote comes amid rising inflation, youth unemployment, and a deepening security crisis in the Anglophone regions. TVC News' Baraka Agberemi looks at the issues shaping the election and what's at stake for Africa's longest serving leader.
As Cameroonians prepare to vote on Sunday, many are asking whether this election would bring change or simply extend the 43-year rule of President Paul Biya. Now 92, President Biya is seeking an eighth term in office, with his campaign relying on more digital messaging rather than physical appearances. He has made just one public rally during the campaign period in the far north. 12 candidates are on the ballot, including opposition figures like Cabral Libil, Akere Muna, Joshua Osi, and former ministers Issa Chiroma and Bello Maigari. But the main opposition voice, Maurice Kamto, has been barred from running, triggering backlash and accusations of political manipulation. In the conflict-hit Anglophone regions of the Northwest and Southwest, separatist groups have imposed an election lockdown, warning residents not to vote. Many fear violence on polling day. Beyond the political drama, everyday Cameroonians are battling rising food prices, poor infrastructure, and high youth unemployment. More than 60% of the population is under 25, and many young people say they are disillusioned. With growing tensions and security fears, authorities have warned against any attempt to declare unofficial results or claim victory before the official announcement. As Cameroonians head to the polls, the key question remains: can the opposition mount a meaningful challenge? Will the conflict-hit regions participate? And will this election move the country forward or keep it firmly in the past? Baraka Agberemi, TVC News.
As Cameroonians cast their votes in a high-stake presidential election, questions around governance, democracy, and human rights take center stage. Joining us now on World Now is Professor Joy Ngozi Ezilo, SAN, who is from the United Nations Independence Commissioner and an expert on Sudan, former UN Special Rapporteur on Trafficking in Persons globally, and former Dean of Law at the University of Nigeria, and founder of VOCAL and Terma SARC, a globally respected voice on justice, human rights, and development. Professor Ezilo brings a critical lens to the unfolding political dynamics in Central Africa. Professor, it's an honor to have you with us. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so what does this election mean for Cameroon, especially with President Paul Biya seeking an eighth term at 92 years old? Hello, Professor. Can you hear me? Of course, we still have Professor Ngozi joining us at this time. Can you hear me now, Professor?
Yes, I can.
Oh, that's good. All right, I was asking earlier, what does this election mean for Cameroon, especially with President Paul Biya going for another term at 92 years? Specifically, he's seeking an eighth term in office at 92 years old.
This is really a very, very distant.
Professor, I think we're having some network issues, still having those network issues, and when it's not your fault, but might be some a network provider you're using. Can you hear us now? All right, so while we wait, while we try to sort out that issue, a bit of some information now. 11 candidates will face off against Cameroon's incumbent president, Paul Biya, and elections this Sunday, which is tomorrow, with the divided opposition having failed to unite behind a joint contender. The 92-year-old head of state, who has spent about 43 years in power, made his first public appearance of the campaign just on Tuesday, just days before the vote. You can see that at a point a statue had to represent him at a particular campaign. We know that 4 candidates among the crowd lineup of presidential hopefuls have drawn attention. 2 former ministers and 2 fierce government adversaries. Of course, we have Issa Bakare, and we have Bello Boba Maigari. Bakare recently defected from the presidential camp and has gathered several thousands of people at his meetings around the country. The former employment minister, also and leader of the Front of the National Salvation of Cameroon, resigned from government in June after more than 20 years in the ranks of the ruling majority. Now, a coalition of minority opposition parties and civil society actors called Union for Change in 2025 nominated Bakare for election in mid-September, but he has not garnered further support since then. Of course, we have Bello Maigari, who is 78 years old. Issa Bakare is 79 years old. All right, Professor, are you with us now?
Yes, I am.
Oh, good, very loud and clear. I was asking you a question about how you would describe looking at the elections coming up tomorrow. A man who has been there for quite a long time is seeking an 8th term in office at 92 years old.
And unfortunately, he will win.
Oh, okay.
He's been there for over 40 years. There is almost zero tolerance to opposition, and that opposition is not strong. He has held the country in a very authoritarian manner. There have been questions around leadership style, a lot of controversy, a lot of issues and concerns around his health and whether he's actually the one who is holding the country, or some other people are placeholders. So some of this, but it's really disturbing when you look at this phenomenon, an actually ugly phenomenon of sit-tight African president. What democracy is about is ability of not just about changing pattern to younger generation, but for elections to be free and fair, and for election to really give voice to the people so that they can choose their leader and choose their leader freely. And importantly, that there should be limitation of tenure. If you have a life presidency, that translates almost to like kingdoms and not countries anymore. So I think we know since 1982 he came into power, and through a special support by Ahidjo then, who eventually who was the president of Cameroon from 1975 to 1982 and resigned and made him the president in 1982. He came into power through his help. And for 40 years, issues, allegations of human rights violation, freedom of expression, inability of citizens to express themselves, and you see people being imprisoned or even incarcerated for actually criticizing him or his government. And then some Cameroonians have come to accept their fate. Some others have left the country because they just can't take it. And then for all those who are there, they've learned to just keep quiet and run. And then you say this is not a military regime. And if it's not a military regime, Why wouldn't you just go to election, become very symbolic? It become actually a sham, of election that do this routinely to say you have the power of the people, when in reality there is no fair competition. There is no fair competition, and people have not been allowed to freely express their choice of who they want to lead them. But I actually feel very sorry, not just for the country and the people, but for people who want to hold on to power for this long. So they would rather they die in power than relinquish power and watch their legacy, whatever has become of their legacy, and see how the country will fare and can provide elderly advice not from the seat of the presidency. And we've seen this in Zimbabwe. You see how it ended. We've seen this in Togo. We've seen this in other parts of Africa. And when this happened, it just kind of undermined democracy, undermined development in those countries. And it will take them as many years as that ruler, because I won't call them leaders, have been in power, even for them to recover. It will take them twice that year, because they're going to grapple again with democracy. They will have to, even if tomorrow they succeed in getting out, but not this time around. Or he dies in power, and then they have democracy, then they are going to be beginning to learn again, and the country will be in tumult, because for far too long it was held by one strong man. So in Africa, like Obama said, we need strong institutions, not strong men and women. But here I say more what we've had is strong men.
All right, quickly, let's talk about Maurice Kamto. Now, he's a leading opposition figure. He has been barred from contesting. How does this impact the legitimacy of the electoral process?
Obviously, no legitimacy, because election is supposed to be credible, is supposed to meet international good practices or best practice. There has to be a fair competition. Political parties will have to put in their candidates, and they will all have to go and vote, and their vote should count. And once you take that out, if you see that there is the leading opposition and you ban them, that they can't run, they can't be on the ballot, then how can you now say the election is credible? So there is a problem with that. It cannot be legitimate. It's just, they will just come and represent him, and will say, oh, I have the vote of my people. So long as my people vote for me, even if I'm going there for the 10th time at 100 years of age, is my people that have affirmed. I don't think that's an affirmation from the people. Definitely not. That's not what democracy is about.
All right. So Cameroon has a relatively very young population with over 60% under 25. Cabral Libby is a 45-year-old, and he is the youngest candidate of them all. Why are the young population in Cameroon not looking towards a younger candidate?
You never can tell what they would do or what they would predict, the outcome and what will happen post-election. But really taking the temperature and looking at what has happened in the past, there may not really be anything. Sometime when they look at Nigerians, I've interacted with a lot of their scholars and everything. They will say, oh, Nigeria people are free, the press is free, people can talk now, we can't do that, at home. And, some of these people were born. And, when they were born, they saw Paul Biya as president, and they are still living there. Still Paul Biya. Before then, remember, before he became even president in 1982, he has been in power. He has served in different high-level positions. So for some of the people, that's the name that has been constant, in their life, of course, and they've internalized it. They are wondering what kind of system, if you haven't even experienced even some other thing that is different. Maybe this is the brand of democracy that Cameroon has. And then for some, they will say, oh, this has provided stability for us. And then we are not at war. We are not fighting. And then, of course, some part of the country has this. So they will think like, okay, let's continue to have it. At least we will have a stable country. We won't be in conflict. We are not like Sudan or, but in the long run, like I said, by the time they finally get rid of him, they are going to have a lot of problem also trying to really, get the country back to having a democratic culture, to respecting fundamental human rights of citizens, to ensuring that all of those things that make a democracy, division of power, separation of powers, that they are things that we put in practice in the country, and they have to review the constitution and all of that. So it's a lot of work, but I think the first step is to really get him to power, and this is proving very difficult because he has held the country really firmly, unfortunately. And I can't see he will just, this is just a mere mnemonics. He will just come out again as the president-elect after eight. This is the eighth one, yeah. So it's really, because look at how big countries and other continents are developing. And it's not like you can say they've performed, well internationally beyond football. We know and share the love, like with Nigeria. What is it? Is it that they are in space? Is it that they are technologically advanced? Is it that today you say, you see these things set Africa back? It sets the continent back. It set the country back. And then the best mind will be the first to migrate out of the country, immigration. And then brain drain will be there, and the lacuna will be created. And then you create a subservient a society, that the power of questioning, the power of resistance, and then the mental, the well-being, the lack of expression, of freedom of expression, that suppression over time has a way to affect the psyche of the people, and will continue to affect that country for a long time to come. So we just hope they get it right, that we don't end up from this to starting to have military coups in the country, and what is going on in other parts of Africa.
The separatist conflict in the northwest and the southwest regions continues to escalate. What impact is this having on voter turnout and electoral participation in those areas?
Obviously, I think we'll watch tomorrow, but there is a serious voter apathy, and they also use violence to also suppress, or if they come out to better. You now voting for the leading candidate, very young, is it 45? Or the leading candidate is already bad. So, but people might still in protest vote for him. That is, if his name is on the ballot, If he's not put on the ballot, people might just still vote any other party. But at the end of the day, some probably will just say, let them, stay back. I'm looking now whether it's compulsory voting. I'm not sure now, because there was a time, they're trying to think about the law of compulsory voting, but I don't think so. Because if not, definitely voters apathy.
All right. So how do you think the international community is likely, how do you think this is likely to affect their perception by the international community if Biya wins again?
Definitely they will condemn, but what have they done? Because at the end of the year, end of the day, this idea of sovereignty of nations, for which African states themselves have continued to say, for Africa, sovereignty of states, solidarity. What does this African solidarity mean? Cameroon is a member of African Union, and then African Union will say, so long as there is election, this is a periodic election, and people have voted for him. So what would they say? Because African Union definitely would be one of those that would be few that would be allowed as delegates, and they may go and say, there was not much violence, and we went round and people came to vote, and then the majority of votes cast for him. What else would they say? But then for the European Union and for the rest of the world, they will condemn. And then 1992, maybe he will really definitely make the Guinness Book of Record. He has already, and will make the Guinness Book of Record as the oldest president, and then even in elective position. Not that there is a monarchical system. It's almost sounding like a monarchy, emperor, And so the international community will condemn. But at the end of the day, they will say, there are also other interests, other external interests, disparate interests. And for some, they can say, Africa is reading with conflict. 2/3 of Africa at one point or the other have been engulfed in conflict. And if this Cameroon is one that has stability, okay, let's leave them, because around them, this other country, so all of those sentiments will come in. But at the end of the day, Cameroonian, the level of intervention is not, if it's not being pushed from within, and then also within the region and within the Central Africa, and you see what is happening to the rest of Central Africa, and people might say not have much interest or appetite, to demand something for that, to support other Cameroonians for change they want and change they long have desired.
So what's your message to Cameroonian voters and civil society groups in this critical period?
They don't have much voice, but please just keep that flag flying high of accountability, of saying that we must have the real democracy, of that this is not a monarchy, and that the democracy means that opposition will be allowed, that there will be fair competition. They can also explore what other available openings in the international community within the international system, for bringing in even action, including International Court of Justice, the World Court, to look at this, the African Union, looking at the systems of human rights, especially for those who are disallowed. And then let's see, because we need to build that momentum that will get him out of office. And I would say, the Cameroonians, please don't stop agitating for your right. Your right to participate in the government of your country, your right to vote and let your vote count, and your right to vote for the candidate of your choice. And if that candidate of your choice is taken off ballot because it has gathered support, because it looks like the change you want, you support that change and take back your country. I think ultimately they have to stand firm in unison as a collective and demand to take back their country as a democracy. Because since independence, I think 1960, they've been at this, how many leadership, and since 1982, over 40-something years, they are still talking about one man, one strong man, and they need their country. So the resistance has to be strong, which is the resilience has been a bit of absence. And I know they look back and look at Nigeria and sometimes say, oh, Nigerians, you guys are doing very well, but I think they have to be strong. They have to really do it for themselves. No one can do it for them.
All right.
And if there are things you can say, and that's what others used to justify it, okay, leave them, they are okay. But I don't think it's okay,
Professor Joy Ngozi Izilo, SAN, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that's our offering this afternoon on World Now. Thank you so much for watching. I am Theophilus Silama.